32 years have passed since that mission, and I still wake up screaming. The pills don't help anymore, neither the ones the VA prescribed, nor the ones I buy on the street when desperation gets too heavy to bear. Sleep brings me back to that place 0 feet below the surface where things exist that shouldn't, where my 5-man team found something that changed everything we thought we knew about what lives in the deep ocean. My name is Commander Vincent Holbrook, though I haven't used that rank in 20 years. These days I work security at a marina in Pensacola, checking locks on boats that will never venture further than recreational fishing grounds. It's a quiet job that lets me keep watch over waters I know are safe, waters where normal marine life follows normal patterns and nothing rises from depths that should remain undisturbed. But sometimes, late at night when the marina is empty and the Gulf lies still under starlight, I remember what's still down there in the deep places. What we found in 1992 during a classified mission that officially never happened. What killed 3 good men and left Martinez and me with memories that the Navy tried to erase but couldn't quite manage. They call it survivor's guilt, the psychiatrists do. Dr. Chen spent 2 years trying to convince me that the hallucinations were trauma responses, that the things I described couldn't exist in any rational universe. She was a good doctor, kind and patient, but she didn't understand that some truths are too large for rational minds to process. The mission began on a Tuesday morning in August, 1992. I was 26 years old, a submarine officer with 8 years of service and a specialty in deep-sea operations. My record was spotless, my psychological evaluations were excellent, and I had clearance for operations that existed only in classified files that most Navy personnel would never see. But even with my security clearance and operational experience, nothing in my training had prepared me for what we would discover in the deep Atlantic. The Navy's classified deep-sea programs dealt with salvage operations, intelligence gathering, and technology recover dangerous work that required specialized equipment and highly trained personnel, but work that followed established protocols based on known science and predictable challenges. What we found 0 feet below the surface operated according to principles that weren't in any military manual, principles that suggested human understanding of the ocean was fundamentally incomplete. The official reports classified our discoveries as national security information, but the real reason for classification wasn't protecting military secrets, it was protecting human civilization from knowledge that would challenge everything we believed about our place in the universe. Captain Reynolds called us into the briefing room at 600 hours myself. Petty Officer Martinez, Sonar Technician Williams, Electronics Specialist Chen, and Hull Maintenance Technician Foster. 5 men with the training and clearance necessary for what the briefing documents described as deep-sea recovery and assessment operations in support of national security objectives. The selection process for our team had been extensive, involving psychological evaluations that went far beyond standard military assessments. We were tested for emotional stability under extreme stress, ability to maintain operational security under pressure, and most importantly, capacity to function effectively after encountering situations that challenged established reality frameworks. At the time, I thought the psychological screening was routine preparation for hazardous duty. Looking back, I understand that we were being evaluated for our ability to handle discoveries that would violate everything the scientific community believed about deep ocean environments and the intelligence that might exist in unexplored regions of Earth's oceans. "Gentlemen," Reynolds began, his weathered face grave with the weight of classified knowledge, "you're being assigned to Operation Deep Current. What I'm about to tell you is compartmentalized above top secret. You will not discuss this mission with Anunino, your families, not your friends, not other Navy personnel without specific clearance." The mission parameters were deceptively simple. Soviet submarine K-219 had suffered a catastrophic accident in 1986, sinking in 0 feet of water, approximately 600 miles east of Bermuda. While the official reports indicated complete loss of the vessel, intelligence sources suggested that critical technology components might be recoverable from specific sections of the wreck. Our job was to descend to the wreck site using the Navy's newest deep-sea exploration vehicle, assess the condition of Soviet technology systems, and retrieve any components that could provide intelligence value for U.S. defense programs. Standard Cold War intelligence gathering, the kind of mission that submarines had been conducting for decades in various forms. But Reynolds' briefing included details that made this operation different from routine salvage work. The K-219 site had been designated a Research Priority Zone by the Navy's Advanced Projects Division, a classification that indicated discoveries at the site had implications beyond simple technology recovery. What makes this site a research priority? Martinez asked, his engineering background making him naturally curious about technical classifications. Previous survey missions have detected anomalies that require further investigation, Reynolds replied carefully. Acoustic signatures that don't match known geological or biological phenomena. Electromagnetic readings that suggest the presence of technology that shouldn't exist at that depth. Soviet technology? Chen inquired. Unknown origin. The anomalies predate the K-219 accident by unknown periods. Intelligence analysis suggests we're dealing with discoveries that could revolutionize our understanding of deep ocean environments. That should have been our second warning, after the mention of lost crews. In 8 years of submarine service, I'd learned that revolutionize our understanding was Navy euphemism for encounters with technology or phenomena that don't fit established science. Usually it meant experimental Soviet equipment or unusual geological formations that had intelligence applications. This time, it meant something that challenged the fundamental assumptions underlying human knowledge of what existed on our own planet. "Gentlemen," Reynolds began, his weathered face grave with the weight of classified knowledge, "you're being assigned to Operation Deep Current. What I'm about to tell you is compartmentalized above top secret. You will not discuss this mission with Anionino, your families, not your friends, not other Navy personnel without specific clearance." The mission parameters were deceptively simple. Soviet submarine K-219 had suffered a catastrophic accident in 1986, sinking in 0 feet of water, approximately 600 miles east of Bermuda. While the official reports indicated complete loss of the vessel, intelligence sources suggested that critical technology components might be recoverable from specific sections of the wreck. Our job was to descend to the wreck site using the Navy's newest deep-sea exploration vehicle, assess the condition of Soviet technology systems, and retrieve any components that could provide intelligence value for U.S. defense programs. Standard salvage operation, Foster had said, reviewing the technical specifications. We've done deeper dives, worked more challenging recovery scenarios. Not like this one, Reynolds replied. The K-219 site has been problematic. 2 previous survey missions reported equipment malfunctions that forced early termination. The third mission was lost with all hands. That should have been our first warning. In 8 years of submarine service, I'd never heard of a deep-sea mission being lost with all hands during peacetime operations. Ships sank, equipment failed, people died, but not entire crews disappearing without explanation during routine salvage work. What kind of equipment malfunctions? Martinez asked, his engineering background making him naturally suspicious of unexplained technical failures. Communication systems, navigation instruments, and life support equipment all failed simultaneously. The last transmission indicated they were attempting emergency ascent, but no debris or survivors were ever recovered. Ocean depth at the target site? Williams inquired, already calculating the challenges of sonar operations at extreme depth. 18,000 feet. Well within operational parameters for the DSV-4 Nereid, but at the edge of our communication range with surface support. The deep-sea vehicle Nereid was state-of-the-art technology in 1992, capable of diving to depths that had previously been inaccessible to human exploration. Titanium hull construction, advanced life support systems, and manipulator arms designed for precision work in the crushing environment of the deep ocean. If anything could survive the pressures and challenges of an 0-foot dive, it was the Nereid. We spent 3 days in preparation equipment checks, dive simulations, and mission rehearsals that covered every conceivable scenario except the one we would actually encounter. The Nereid performed flawlessly during all pre-mission tests, and our crew coordination was seamless after months of training together. On Friday morning, we loaded aboard the support vessel USS Scorpion and departed Norfolk Naval Base for the coordinates where Soviet submarine K-219 rested in the abyssal depths of the Atlantic Ocean. The voyage took 18 hours, during which we reviewed mission protocols and studied intelligence photographs of the target vessel. The photographs showed a submarine broken into 3 major sections, scattered across roughly 200 yards of seafloor. The forward section contained the torpedo compartments and crew quarters. The middle section housed the reactor compartment and control systems that were our primary target. The aft section contained propulsion systems and steering mechanisms that were of secondary intelligence value. Entry point will be through the damaged section between the reactor compartment and crew quarters, I explained during our final briefing. Electronics bay should be accessible through the main corridor, assuming structural integrity hasn't been compromised by implosion damage. Recovery priorities? Chen asked, checking his notes against the mission parameters. Primary target is the navigation computer system. Secondary targets are communication equipment and any documentation that survived the sinking. Tertiary targets are reactor control systems, but only if primary and secondary objectives are completed with time and resources remaining. Time limit on bottom? Foster inquired. 4 hours maximum. Life support systems are rated for 6 hours, but we maintain 2-hour safety margin for emergency ascent if required. Saturday morning brought perfect conditions for deep-sea operations. Calm seas, clear weather, and minimal current activity that would simplify navigation and positioning. At 800 hours, we entered the Nereid and began our descent toward the coordinates where K-219 waited in the eternal darkness of the ocean depths. The descent took 90 minutes, following standard decompression protocols that prevented damage to sensitive equipment and allowed our pressure suits to adjust gradually to the increasing water pressure. At 50 feet, daylight disappeared completely, leaving us dependent on the Nereid's external lighting systems to navigate through the black water column. At 10 feet, we began encountering marine life that existed only in the deepest parts of the ocean, bioluminescent creatures that created moving constellations in the darkness around our vessel. Giant squid whose tentacles brushed against our hull before disappearing into the black water. Deep sea fish with anatomical features that seemed alien compared to surface marine life. Normal deep ocean ecosystem, Williams reported, monitoring our sonar displays for signs of the wreck site. Biomass density is higher than expected for this depth, but within normal parameters for abyssal marine environments. Wreck contact, Martinez announced at 800 feet depth. Large metallic object bearing 45 degrees, distance approximately 300 yards. Configuration matches target vessel profile. Through the Nereid's observation ports, we got our first look at Soviet submarine K-219. The massive vessel lay broken on the seafloor, like the bones of some prehistoric monster, its hull sections separated by the catastrophic forces that had destroyed it during the 1986 accident. But even damaged and scattered, the submarine was an impressive testament to Soviet naval engineering. Approach vector to the reactor compartment, I ordered, studying the wreck configuration through our external cameras. Foster, assess hull integrity around the entry point. Foster worked with the Nereid's manipulator arms, testing the structural stability of the damaged hull sections where we planned to enter the submarine. The metal was corroded from 6 years of exposure to seawater, but the titanium construction had prevented complete structural collapse. Entry point is viable, Foster reported. Hull breach is large enough for equipment access, and internal corridor appears intact. No obvious structural hazards. Williams, any acoustic contacts? Other vessels, marine life, anything that might interfere with recovery operations? Negative on surface contacts. Deep ocean marine life is present, but not unusual for this environment. Acoustic conditions are optimal for operations. Chen, electronics bay accessibility? External damage assessment suggests the electronics compartment should be reachable through the main corridor. Power systems are obviously offline, but physical components may be intact enough for recovery. Everything was proceeding according to plan. We had located our target, assessed the approach conditions, and confirmed that recovery operations were feasible. All that remained was entering the submarine and retrieving the Soviet technology that had brought us to this remote section of ocean floor. That's when Martinez detected the anomaly. "Commander," he said, his voice tight with concern as he studied the sonar display, "I'm reading a large acoustic signature directly below the wreck site. Something massive, approximately 500 feet beneath the submarine." "Marine life?" I suggested, though something in Martinez's tone suggested he didn't think so. "Negative. The signature is too regular, too geometrically defined to be biological. It's artificial, Commander. There's another structure down there." I moved to the sonar display and immediately understood Martinez's concern. Below the Soviet submarine, clearly visible on our instruments, was something that had no business being on the ocean floor 0 feet beneath the surface. It was enormously 400 feet long and 100 feet wide, with geometric proportions that indicated artificial construction. "Could be another wreck," Foster suggested. "Ship that sank decades ago, buried under sediment until the K-219 impact disturbed the seafloor. Configuration doesn't match any known vessel type," Williams said, studying the sonar patterns. "The structure is too regular, too deliberately geometric to be conventional ship construction." "Are we detecting any energy signatures?" I asked. "Electrical activity, thermal output, anything that might indicate the structure is operational?" Chen checked his instruments. "Negative on electrical activity. Thermal readings are unusual. The structure is warmer than surrounding seafloor by approximately 15 degrees, but not consistent with any known power source." "Could be geothermal," Martinez suggested. "Underwater volcanic activity or thermal vents. At this depth and location? Highly unlikely." I made the decision that would change everything. Instead of proceeding directly to the K-219 recovery operation, I ordered a preliminary survey of the unknown structure. The mission parameters allowed for investigation of unexpected discoveries that might have intelligence value, and this clearly qualified. "Descent to 18,500 feet," I ordered. "Survey approach to the unknown structure. All crew maintain heightened alert status." As we descended toward the mysterious object, our external lights began revealing details that made no sense according to anything in naval architecture or deep-sea engineering. The structure wasn't a ship or submarine, it was something else entirely, built according to design principles that didn't match any human technology. The hull, if it could be called that, was constructed from materials that seemed to shift and change in our lights. Not metal, not polymer, but something that appeared to be partly organic and partly artificial. The surface was covered with patterns that looked deliberate, symbols or markings that suggested intelligence behind the construction. "Commander," Williams said, his voice barely above a whisper, "that thing is definitely artificial, but it's not human." Most unsettling were the proportions. The structure was built on a scale that suggested inhabitants much larger than human beings. Entry ports that were 20 feet tall. Corridor configurations that would accommodate creatures of enormous size. And throughout the visible sections, a sense of age that made the Soviet submarine above us seem like a recent arrival to these depths. "Age estimate?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. "Based on sediment accumulation and corrosion patterns," Foster said slowly, "this structure has been here for decades, possibly much longer." "How much longer?" "Centuries. Maybe more." As we approached the structure, our lights revealed an opening that was clearly designed as an entry point. It was massive, 30 feet across and 40 feet tall, with what appeared to be mechanical systems around the perimeter. But the mechanisms weren't recognizable as any human technology. "That's an airlock," Martinez said with certainty. "Pressure equalization system designed for something to enter and exit this structure while maintaining internal environment." "For what?" Chen asked, voicing the question all of us were thinking. Before anyone could answer, the structure began responding to our presence. Lights, if they could be called, light started, activating along the hull surface. Not electrical illumination, but bioluminescent patterns that pulsed and shifted like living things. The patterns moved across the structure's surface in ways that suggested communication or activation sequences. Energy signatures are increasing, Chen reported, his instruments detecting changes that our eyes could see but our minds couldn't accept. The structure is powering up. Emergency ascent, I ordered, every instinct warning me that we were encountering something beyond our understanding or ability to handle safely. But before Martinez could initiate ascent procedures, something emerged from the structure's entry port. It was enormous, easily 50 feet long, and proportioned unlike anything in known marine biology. The creature moved with fluid grace, despite its massive size, propelling itself through the water with appendages that seemed to combine biological and mechanical elements. Its head, if the forward section could be called a head, was larger than our entire vessel. But most terrifying was its obvious intelligence. The creature studied our submersible with the same scientific curiosity we had been directing toward its home. It circled us slowly, examining our technology and apparently assessing our capabilities and intentions. "What is that thing?" Foster whispered, his voice breaking with terror. "I don't know," I replied, watching the creature's movements with growing dread. "But it's intelligent. It's evaluating us." The creature produced sounds that carried through the water and into our hull complex vocalizations that were clearly structured communication. Not random animal sounds, but deliberate language with grammatical patterns and tonal variations that indicated sophisticated cognitive capabilities. "It's trying to talk to us," Williams said, monitoring the acoustic patterns on his instruments. "How do we respond?" Martinez asked. "We don't," I said, making the decision that would haunt me for the rest of my life. "Emergency ascent, maximum rate, now." Martinez activated the ballast systems, and the Nereid began rising toward the surface. But as we ascended, more creatures emerged from the structure below us. Not just one, but dozens, moving in coordinated formations that indicated social organization and group intelligence. They followed us upward, easily matching our ascent rate despite the crushing pressure changes that should have affected any known marine life. At 15,0 feet depth, they began producing new Soundshire frequency vocalizations that seemed to be directed at each other rather than at us. "They're communicating about us," Williams reported. "Coordinated acoustic exchanges between multiple individuals." "Are they threatening us?" Foster asked. "I don't think so. It feels more like discussion, like they're deciding what to do about our intrusion." At 12,0 feet, something happened that violated everything I thought I understood about deep-sea operations. The creatures began affecting our equipment, not physically damaging it, but somehow interfering with our electronic systems in ways that shouldn't have been possible. "Navigation systems are malfunctioning," Martinez reported. "Compass readings are erratic. GPS is showing impossible coordinates." "Communication with surface support?" I asked. "Intermittent. Radio signals are being modified. Surface support is receiving our transmissions, but the content is being altered during transmission." "Altered how?" "They're hearing routine status reports, normal ascent procedures, nothing about what we've encountered down here." The implications were staggering. The creatures weren't just intelligent, they had technology that could interact with human electronic systems, modifying our communications to prevent surface personnel from learning about their existence. "Life support systems?" I asked, checking our most critical equipment. "Functional, but displaying readings that don't match actual conditions. According to the instruments, we're at 80 feet depth with normal ascent profile. According to visual confirmation, we're still at 12,0 feet with unknown creatures monitoring our every movement." At 10,0 feet, the creatures began withdrawing, returning to the depths from which they had emerged. But before they disappeared completely, the largest individual approached our vessel one final time. It positioned itself directly in front of our observation port, its massive form filling our entire field of view. For nearly a minute, human and non-human intelligence studied each other across the boundary of our protective hull. I could see complex sensory organs that moved and focused like eyes, but with capabilities that obviously exceeded human vision. I could see what appeared to be tool-using appendages that handled technology integrated into the creature's own biology. Most importantly, I could see intelligence that recognized me as another thinking being, intelligence that was making judgments about human behavior and capabilities based on our encounter. Then it was gone, disappearing into the black water below us, like a nightmare that dissolved upon waking. Our ascent to the surface proceeded without further incident, but nothing was the same. Our equipment continued displaying false readings that made the entire encounter appear routine to surface support personnel. Our communication recordings contained only standard operational reports with no mention of the structure or creatures we had discovered. When we surfaced and returned to the USS Scorpion, our debriefing was a masterpiece of selective amnesia. According to our official reports, we had successfully located and surveyed the K-219 wreck site, determined that Soviet technology recovery was not feasible due to structural damage, and returned to the surface with no unusual incidents. But that night, alone in our quarters, the five of us compared notes and confirmed that we had all experienced the same impossible encounter. We had discovered evidence of non-human intelligence with technology that surpassed human capabilities, living in structures that predated human civilization by unknown periods of time. "What do we do?" Chen asked. "This is the most significant discovery in human history. We can't just bury it in classified files." "We follow orders," I replied, though every instinct told me this was wrong. "We maintain operational security and let higher authority decide how to handle the information." "And if higher authority decides to weaponize it?" Martinez asked. "If they want to go back down there with military force instead of scientific curiosity? That's not our decision to make." I was wrong. About following orders, about trusting higher authority, about everything that followed our return to Norfolk Naval Base. The debrief with Captain Reynolds was unlike anything in my military experience. Instead of standard operational review, we were separated and interrogated individually by personnel. I didn't recognize civilians with security clearances that exceeded my own, asking questions that suggested they knew exactly what we had encountered in the deep ocean. "Commander Holbrook," one of the interrogators said, "your mission report indicates routine surveillance of the K-219 wreck site with no unusual findings. Is that correct?" "That's correct," I replied, following protocol that required confirmation of official reports regardless of personal knowledge. "No contact with unknown marine life, no discovery of unidentified structures or technology?" "No, sir. No evidence of non-human intelligence or capabilities that might threaten national security?" The question revealed that they already knew what we had found. This wasn't debriefing, it was testing our willingness to maintain silence about discoveries that challenged everything the government thought it understood about life on Earth. "No evidence of any such discoveries," I confirmed. "Good. Because any reports of unusual findings during deep-sea operations could be misinterpreted by hostile intelligence services as evidence of advanced Soviet technology that might threaten U.S. maritime security." The message was clear. Our encounter with non-human intelligence would be classified as national security information, not because it posed a threat to the United States, but because public knowledge of such intelligence could destabilize social and political systems that depended on human beings believing they were the dominant intelligence on Earth. Over the following weeks, each member of our team was reassigned to different commands, scattered across the Navy to prevent us from comparing notes or developing shared narratives about what we had experienced. Williams was transferred to surface operations in San Diego. Chen was assigned to electronics training in Virginia. Foster was moved to submarine maintenance in Connecticut. Martinez and I were both assigned to shore duty, ostensibly for medical evaluation following stress reactions from deep-sea operations. The medical evaluations were thorough, professional, and designed to identify any signs that we might discuss classified information with unauthorized personnel. Dr. Sarah Cheno, relation to our electronics specialist, was the psychiatrist assigned to my case. She was brilliant, kind, and completely unprepared to deal with a patient who had encountered intelligence that shouldn't exist according to mainstream science. "Vincent," she said during our first session, "your commanding officer indicates you've been experiencing disturbing dreams and anxiety reactions following a classified operation. Can you tell me about these symptoms?" "Nightmares," I admitted. "Insomnia, hypervigilance, classic stress reaction symptoms." "Can you describe the content of the nightmares?" "Deep water, crushing pressure, feeling watched by something enormous and intelligent. Is this related to the classified operation you participated in? I can't discuss operational details, but the psychological effects are consistent with exposure to extreme stress during deep-sea operations. Dr. Chen worked with me for 2 years, treating symptoms without ever learning their true cause. She prescribed medications for anxiety and sleep disorders, taught coping mechanisms for managing intrusive thoughts, and helped me develop strategies for functioning despite carrying knowledge that felt too heavy to bear. But she couldn't cure the root cause of my psychological distress, because the root cause wasn't psychological at all. It was the rational response of a human mind that had encountered intelligence far beyond human understanding and been forced to remain silent about discoveries that could change everything we thought we knew about life on Earth. In 1994, I was medically retired from the Navy with a diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder and anxiety reactions that made me unsuitable for continued military service. My pension was generous, my medical benefits were comprehensive, and my personnel file was classified at levels that would prevent any civilian employer from learning the true reasons for my retirement. I moved to Pensacola, bought a small trailer near an abandoned shipyard, and tried to build a life that didn't involve thinking about what lived in the deep places of the ocean. For a while, it almost worked. I had relationships, held jobs, maintained the illusion of normal civilian life, but the nightmares never stopped, and neither did the monitoring. They were subtle about government personnel who kept track of my activities without making their surveillance obvious. Phone calls that were answered by automated systems that asked detailed questions about my current psychological state. Periodic medical evaluations that were supposedly routine follow-ups, but included questions about whether I'd discussed my military service with anyone outside official channels. In 1998, Martinez contacted me through channels that couldn't be easily monitored. He was living in Oregon, working as a marine mechanic, struggling with the same psychological burden that I carried. We met once in a diner outside Portland and confirmed that our memories of the 1992 mission were identical despite 6 years of separation. "They're still down there," Martinez said, studying his coffee cup as if it contained answers to questions that had been haunting him for years. "Whatever we found, it's still in those deep waters, still watching surface activity." "How do you know?" "Commercial fishing reports, ships that lose equipment in deep water, electronics that malfunction in specific areas of the Atlantic. The patterns match what we experienced during our encounter." "You think they're still monitoring human activity?" "I think they've been monitoring human activity for longer than we can imagine. I think what we found in 1992 was just the first time humans had technology sophisticated enough to detect their presence. And now? Now they know that we know. The question is what they plan to do about it." Martinez died 3 months later in what the Oregon State Police ruled a single-vehicle accident. His truck went off a coastal highway during a storm, plunging into the Pacific Ocean in waters that were too deep and dangerous for recovery of either the vehicle or his body. I attended the funeral, maintained appropriate expressions of grief for a former military colleague, and never spoke about my suspicions regarding the timing and circumstances of his death. But I began keeping journals detailed records of everything I could remember about the 1992 mission, hidden in places where government monitors wouldn't easily find them. Over the years, I've documented dozens of incidents that suggest ongoing contact between human maritime activities and the intelligence we discovered in the deep ocean. Commercial vessels that report equipment malfunctions in specific areas of the Atlantic. Naval exercises that are terminated early due to technical difficulties. Deep-sea research missions that return with unexplained gaps in their recorded data. The pattern is clear to anyone who knows what to look for. The deep ocean intelligence is still there, still monitoring human activity, still protecting its secrets through technology that can interface with human electronics in ways that make detection nearly impossible. And sometimes, late at night when the Gulf waters are still and I'm alone at the marina, I wonder what they're waiting for. Whether they're simply observing human technological development, or whether they're preparing for something that will require them to end their millennia of hidden existence. 32 years have passed since that mission, and I still wake up screaming. But now I understand that the nightmares aren't psychological trauma. They're memories of intelligence that exists beyond human understanding, intelligence that has been sharing our planet for far longer than we ever imagined. The truth is still down there, 0 feet below the surface, waiting in structures that predate human civilization, waiting and watching as human technology advances toward the point where accidental contact becomes inevitable. And when that contact occurs, when humanity discovers what I found in 1992, I pray that we respond with wisdom rather than fear, with curiosity rather than aggression. Because the intelligence in the deep places has been patient with us so far, but patience has limits, and we are approaching technologies that will make our presence in their domain impossible to ignore. I'm 58 years old now, living on a marina security guard's salary and VA disability payments. My trailer is filled with journals that document 30 years of evidence for intelligence that officially doesn't exist. My medicine cabinet contains prescriptions for anxiety and sleep disorders that help me function but never completely quiet the memories. The trailer sits on a lot that overlooks the abandoned Pensacola shipyard, where rusted hulks of decommissioned vessels slowly decay in the Florida sun. Most people would find the view depressing. Broken ships and empty dry docks that once built vessels for America's naval fleet. But I find comfort in the decay, in the reminder that even the most sophisticated human technology eventually succumbs to time and the relentless forces of nature. My job at the marina keeps me occupied during daylight hours, checking locks on boats that will never venture into deep water, maintaining security systems that protect recreational vessels from routine theft and vandalism. The work is simple, predictable, and safe, everything that my previous career in deep-sea operations was not. But the nights are different. When the marina is empty and the Gulf waters lie still under starlight, the memories become impossible to suppress. I sit on my trailer's small deck, drinking coffee that's too strong and documenting everything I can remember about the mission that destroyed my faith in humanity's understanding of the world we inhabit. The journals fill 3 filing cabinets now, thousands of pages of handwritten notes that detail every aspect of the 1992 encounter, and every subsequent incident that suggests ongoing contact between human maritime activities and the intelligence we discovered in Atlantic depths. I write in code, using technical terminology and military abbreviations that would be meaningless to casual readers, but preserve the essential details for anyone with the background to understand their significance. Sometimes I wonder if the government monitors know about the journals. They've had 30 years to perfect their surveillance techniques, and my psychological profile would indicate a high probability that I'm documenting classified information despite official orders to maintain silence. But if they know about my record keeping, they haven't interfered, perhaps understanding that documentation serves as a psychological pressure valve that helps me maintain functional silence about discoveries that could destabilize global political systems. Or perhaps they want the records to exist in case future circumstances require detailed testimony from witnesses who survived direct contact with non-human intelligence. The government's long-term planning capabilities are more sophisticated than most people realize, and maintaining access to first-hand accounts of encounters with unknown phenomena would be valuable if contact with deep ocean intelligence eventually becomes impossible to suppress. The marina where I work attracts an interesting mix of people-wealthy retirees with expensive fishing boats, commercial fishermen who work the Gulf's shrimp and snapper grounds, and occasional military personnel on leave who come to fish in waters where the biggest challenges are weather and equipment maintenance, rather than hostile forces or classified operations. Sometimes young sailors approach me, asking about my Navy service, curious about deep-sea operations, and the kind of missions that require security clearances and psychological evaluations. I tell them about routine submarine duty, standard naval operations, the kind of service that builds character and serves national security interests. I never tell them about the mission in 1992, about the discovery that changed everything I thought I knew about humanity's place in the universe. Because some knowledge is too dangerous to share, and some truths are too large for individual minds to bear, without the support systems and security protocols that classified programs provide. But I watch their faces when they talk about their own deep water experiences, looking for signs that they've encountered anomalies that don't match standard training or established scientific knowledge. Most haven't. Their service involves routine operations in well-mapped areas where human technology operates according to predictable principles. Occasionally, though, I see something in their expressions that suggests they've encountered situations that challenge their understanding of normal maritime operations. Equipment malfunctions that occurred in patterns, too coordinated to be coincidental. Sonar contacts that appeared and disappeared in ways that violated known physics. Acoustic phenomena that sounded like structured communication from sources that shouldn't exist in deep ocean environments. When I see those signs, I provide subtle warnings disguised as general advice about deepwater safety. I emphasize the importance of following established protocols, maintaining communication with surface support, and never investigating anomalies that fall outside standard operational parameters. I stress the psychological challenges of deep-sea duty and the importance of reporting unusual experiences to medical personnel who can provide appropriate support and evaluation. Most importantly, I teach them to recognize the difference between encounters that can be safely discussed with colleagues and encounters that should be reported only through official channels to personnel with appropriate security clearances. The distinction isn't always obvious to young sailors who haven't learned that some discoveries carry responsibilities and dangers that extend far beyond individual career considerations. The Gulf waters where I now work are shallow enough and well-traveled enough that contact with deep ocean intelligence is unlikely. But the Atlantic Ocean, where we made our 1,992 discovery, is vast, and human deep-sea operations are becoming more frequent and sophisticated as technology advances and commercial interests drive exploration into previously inaccessible regions. Every year brings new reports of unusual deep ocean phenomena that echo the patterns Martinez and I documented after our encounter with non-human intelligence. Commercial fishing vessels that lose equipment in specific areas where electronics malfunction without apparent cause. Research expeditions that return with unexplained gaps in their recorded data. Military exercises that are terminated early due to technical difficulties that follow no predictable failure patterns. The evidence accumulates slowly, carefully dispersed across different agencies and commercial operators to prevent pattern recognition that might lead to unauthorized investigation of areas where contact with unknown intelligence has occurred. But for someone who knows what to look for, the signs are unmistakable. The deep ocean intelligence we discovered in 1,992 is still there, still monitoring human activity, still protecting its secrets through technology that can interface with human electronics in ways that make detection nearly impossible for personnel without direct experience of such capabilities. And sometimes, late at night when the marina is quiet and I'm documenting another incident that suggests ongoing contact between human operations and non-human intelligence, I wonder what they're waiting for. Whether they're simply observing human technological development with scientific curiosity, or whether they're evaluating our species for purposes that require them to understand our capabilities and limitations before making decisions that will affect both civilizations. The truth is still down there, 0 feet below the surface, waiting in structures that predate human civilization by unknown millennia. Waiting and watching as human technology advances toward the point where accidental contact becomes inevitable and sustained communication becomes possible. When that contact occurs, when humanity discovers what I found in 1,992, I pray that we respond with wisdom rather than fear, with curiosity rather than aggression. Because the intelligence in the deep places has been patient with us so far, but patience has limits, and we are approaching capabilities that will make our presence in their domain impossible to ignore or redirect through subtle technological interference. But I keep the journals, document the patterns, and wait for the day when contact with the deep ocean intelligence becomes too obvious for government classification to suppress. On that day, humanity will need witnesses who can explain what we're dealing with, guides who understand that intelligence exists in forms we never imagined. Until then, I work security at a marina where normal boats carry normal people to normal fishing grounds, where the water is shallow enough that nothing ancient rises from the depths, to remind us how little we really know about the world we inhabit. And every night, I remember what's still down there, waiting in the deep places where human light has never penetrated, where intelligence watches the surface world with patience that has lasted for centuries but may not last much longer. The ocean is vast, and it keeps its secrets well, but not forever.